This is the kind of story that gets whispered in academy dormitories across 3-star systems, the kind that makes senior cadets shake their heads and laugh nervously into their stimulant drinks. I know because I was there. I pulled the security footage 17 times trying to understand what I witnessed. It all started at Crimson Gate Academy, the most prestigious and brutal military training facility in the Galactic Defense Network. The academy floats in a pocket dimension where gravity, atmosphere, and environmental conditions can be adjusted to simulate any battlefield in known space. It is where the Coalition sends candidates who want to join the Vanguard Corps, the special operations unit that handles planetary invasions, hostage rescues, and impossible missions that regular forces cannot touch. The acceptance rate is 4%. The graduation rate is 32% of those accepted. Do the math. It is not a place for the weak, the hesitant, or the unlucky. Running the combat training program was Master Instructor Thane Karoth, a Draconite warrior who stood 4 meters tall with scales like armored plating and claws that could shred reinforced steel. His species had evolved on a world where the atmosphere was so dense it was practically liquid, where gravity was 6 times Earth standard, where predators hunted in packs of hundreds. Draconites were born warriors. Their military tradition stretched back 12,000 years. Thane had personally trained 3 generations of Vanguard operatives. His reputation was simple. He had never failed to break a cadet who needed breaking, and he had never passed a cadet who did not deserve it. Then, humanity submitted its first candidate. We had been part of the Galactic Coalition for exactly 14 months. Our initial assessments had been underwhelming. Earth was classified as a Category 3 world, meaning moderate gravity, stable climate, and relatively docile megafauna. Humans were listed as suitable for support roles, medical services, and administrative positions. Our physical capabilities were rated as below average. Our combat experience was dismissed as primitive tribal conflicts that bore no resemblance to modern warfare. So when Lieutenant Maya Reeves applied to Crimson Gate Academy, the response was institutional amusement. Her file showed standard human parameters, 1.7 meters tall, 70 kilograms, no cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications. She had served 3 years in Earth's United Defense Force, primarily in logistics and supply chain management. Her combat experience consisted of basic training and 2 minor peacekeeping deployments, where she had never fired her weapon outside of practice ranges. On paper, she was the least qualified candidate in the Academy's history. Her application essay, when asked why she wanted to join the Vanguard Corps, was characteristically brief. Because someone has to be first, and I volunteer. The betting pools opened immediately. How long would the human last? The over-under was set at 4 days. Nobody took the over. Maya arrived with the other candidates on orientation day. The cohort numbered 47, representing 23 different species from across Coalition space. There was Kron, a massive Ursanid whose species were known for their berserker rage in combat. There was Salus, a graceful Avarian whose wings could generate hurricane-force winds. There was Jex, a crystalline lithomorph who could shrug off energy weapons like rain. And dozens more, each one a champion from their homeworld, each one convinced they would be among the 32% who graduated. Maya stood among them looking exactly like what she was, average. Not tall, not imposing, not intimidating. Her gear was standard-issue human military equipment, which looked primitive compared to the advanced armor and weapons the other candidates carried. She had a simple ballistic vest, a chemical propellant sidearm, and boots that had clearly seen extensive use. Commandant Vex, a multi-armed hexapod who had founded the Academy 2 centuries ago, gave the welcome address. His voice echoed through the assembly hall, each of his 6 limbs gesturing for emphasis. You are here because you believe you are exceptional. You are wrong. You are here because you have potential. Whether that potential is realized depends entirely on your ability to endure, adapt, and overcome. Most of you will fail, some of you will be injured, a few of you may die, though we try to avoid that. The Vanguard Corps needs warriors who can face the impossible and make it possible. If you cannot do that, you do not belong here. Then Master Instructor Thane entered the hall, and the temperature seemed to drop. He moved with the predatory grace of an apex hunter, his scales catching the light like polished obsidian. He stopped in the center of the assembled candidates, his golden eyes sweeping across them with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating meat. "I am Master Instructor Thane Karoth," he said, his voice a deep rumble that resonated in bone and marrow. "For the next 6 months, your life belongs to me. I will push you beyond your limits. I will find your breaking points. I will discover which of you are truly worthy of the Vanguard and which of you are pretenders who will get real soldiers killed." His gaze fell on Maya, and he stepped forward until he loomed over her, his shadow engulfing her completely. "Human," he said, the word somehow both curious and dismissive. "Your species has been in space for barely a solar rotation. You have no military tradition worthy of the name. Your physical capabilities are mediocre at best. Why do you believe you belong here?" Maya looked up at him without flinching. "Because I'm willing to try, sir. Trying is not enough. Then I guess I'll have to do more than try, sir." Thane's lips curled back, revealing rows of serrated teeth. It might have been a fa-ba smile. It might have been a threat. "We shall see." The first day of training should have been a warning. The physical assessment began at dawn, which at Crimson Gate meant the pocket dimension sun simulation was set to maximum intensity, creating conditions similar to a desert planet at noon. Temperature, 48 degrees Celsius. Humidity, 12%. Atmospheric pressure, 1.4 times standard. The candidates were ordered to complete a 20-kilometer run in full gear. No time limit was given, but everyone understood that the slowest would face additional scrutiny. Kron finished first, his massive Ursinid legs covering ground with machine-like efficiency. Salas flew most of the course, which was technically allowed. Jek simply marched forward with the unstoppable momentum of living crystal. The faster candidates finished within 90 minutes. Maya finished in 2 hours and 37 minutes, placing her in the bottom quartile. But unlike some of the candidates who collapsed at the finish line or required medical attention, Maya simply stopped, checked her hydration levels, and began stretching. Assistant Instructor Vren, a lean feline whose species prided themselves on endurance, approached her with a scanner. "Your core temperature is elevated, but within acceptable parameters. Heart rate is high but stable. You're not showing signs of heat exhaustion or dehydration." Vren's ears flicked with confusion. "Your performance was mediocre, but your recovery is notable. Explain." "I ran at a sustainable pace, ma'am," Maya said. "I figured if this was day 1, there would be more to come. Seemed smarter to finish with energy in reserve than to burn out trying to impress someone." Vren's tail twitched. "You are not here to be smart. You are here to be exceptional." "Respectfully, ma'am, I think being smart is part of being exceptional." The first week continued in similar fashion. Combat drills, obstacle courses, tactical simulations, and endless physical conditioning. Maya was never the best at anything. She was middle of the pack in marksmanship, below average in hand-to-hand combat, and unremarkable in tactical planning. But she never quit. She never complained. She never seemed to reach her limit. On day 8, Thane decided to apply pressure. The exercise was called the Crucible. Candidates were dropped into a simulated hostile environment with minimal equipment and ordered to survive for 72 hours while completing a series of objectives. The environment rotated every 12 hours: jungle, Arctic, desert, urban ruins. Enemy drones would hunt them. Environmental hazards would test them. Failure meant expulsion from the academy. The candidates were released in groups of 3. Maya was paired with Kron and a nervous insectoid named Click, whose species had compound vision and the ability to process information at superhuman speeds. "Try not to slow us down, human," Kron growled as they materialized in the jungle. Simulation. The air was thick with humidity, the vegetation so dense it blocked out most of the artificial sun. Sounds of predators echoed through the trees. "I'll do my best," Maya replied, checking her equipment. She had a knife, a canteen, a basic med kit, and a flare gun with 3 charges. Click's antennae twitched rapidly. Probability of survival for all 3 members of this team, 47%. Probability increases to 61% if we sacrifice the human as a distraction during enemy contact. "Nobody's getting sacrificed," Maya said firmly. We work together or we all fail. The first 12 hours were manageable. They located the first objective, a supply cache hidden in the canopy, and secured it without incident. Kron's strength made climbing easy. Click's enhanced vision spotted threats before they became problems. Maya handled navigation and resource management, rationing their water and planning their route. The environment shifted to Arctic. Temperature dropped to -40 degrees. The supply cache had included thermal gear, but it was designed for alien physiologies. Maya's suit was poorly fitted, leaving gaps where cold air penetrated. "You are shivering," Click observed. "Your body temperature is dropping. This is inefficient." "I'm fine," Maya said through chattering teeth. "Let's keep moving." They located the second objective, a communication relay they needed to activate, but enemy drones had found them, 3 hunter-killers equipped with stunners and tracking systems. "We fight," Kron declared, his species' battle rage beginning to show in his reddening eyes. "We run," Maya countered. "We're not here to defeat drones. We're here to complete objectives." "Cowardice. Tactics. There's a difference." They ran. Kron wanted to fight, but Maya's logic was sound. They reached a narrow ravine where the drone's bulk made pursuit difficult. Click used his compound eyes to track the drone's patrol patterns, finding a gap in their coverage. They slipped through. The environment shifted again to desert. The heat was crushing. Water became the critical resource. Their rations were running low. "We should split up," Kron suggested. "Cover more ground. Find water faster." "Bad idea," Maya said. "We stay together. Splitting up in hostile territory is how people die." "You are not in command here, human." "No, but I'm the one thinking clearly while you're dehydrated and making poor decisions." Kron snarled but followed. His pride was wounded, but Maya's tone had been respectful, stating facts rather than challenging his authority. They found water at the 36-hour mark, a simulated oasis that was also the third objective location. But the area was swarming with drones, at least a dozen, maybe more. "This is impossible," Click buzzed. "We cannot approach without being detected. Probability of success, less than 8%. Maya studied the situation. "What if we create a distraction?" "With what?" Kron demanded. "We have no explosives, no weapons capable of drawing that many drones away." Maya held up her flare gun. "I've got 3 charges. If I fire them from 3 different locations, the drones will investigate each flare, splitting their forces. While they're distracted, you 2 move in, complete the objective, and get out." "And what happens to you while you are running around firing flares?" Kron asked. "I avoid getting caught." "The human is proposing self-sacrifice," Click observed. "This is illogical. Her survival benefits the team." "It's not self-sacrifice if I don't plan on getting caught," Maya replied. "Trust me, I'm very good at not being where people expect me to be." They implemented the plan because they had no better option. Maya moved to 3 different positions over the course of 20 minutes, firing a flare from each location. The drones responded exactly as predicted, converging on each flare source to investigate. Kron and Click slipped into the oasis, activated the third objective, and extracted before the drones realized they had been deceived. Maya rejoined them at the rally point, breathing hard but undetected. "Your plan worked," Kron admitted grudgingly. "You have tactical insight." "I have experience not dying," Maya corrected. "There's a difference." The final 12 hours in urban ruins were the hardest. They were exhausted, low on supplies, and the environment was a maze of collapsed buildings and hidden threats. The fourth and final objective was located at the top of a partially collapsed tower. They would need to climb. "I will carry you both," Kron offered. "My strength allows it." But when they reached the tower, they discovered the climbing surface was unstable. The building was deteriorating in real time, a simulation of a structure damaged by orbital bombardment. Kron's massive weight caused sections to crumble. "New plan," Maya said. "I go up alone. I'm the lightest. Click, you guide me with your compound vision, spot the stable handholds. Kron, you anchor the rope in case I fall." She climbed. It took an hour of careful, methodical progress. Twice, handholds crumbled and she nearly fell, but she reached the top, activated the final objective, and rappelled down. They crossed the finish line at 71 hours and 14 minutes. All 3 members intact, all 4 objectives completed. Thane was waiting at the extraction point. "Acceptable," he said, which from him was high praise, his golden eyes fixed on Maya. "You performed adequately, human. You did not excel, but you did not fail. This surprises me." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied. "Do not mistake my words for approval. Adequate is not sufficient for the Vanguard Corps. We require excellence." "Understood, sir. I'll work harder." Over the following weeks, the candidate pool shrank. 47 became 39, then 32, then 26. Injuries, voluntary withdrawals, and academic failures took their toll. Maya remained, still not the best at anything, but consistent in a way that became impossible to ignore. Thane began to focus more attention on her. He increased her training load, assigned her additional duties, and placed her in leadership positions during exercises. He was testing her, looking for the breaking point that every candidate possessed. The other candidates noticed. Some resented the attention she received. Others, like Kron, had developed respect for the small human who never quit. "You have a quality," Kron told her one evening as they recovered from a particularly brutal obstacle course. "My people call it Uruk. It means the stone that does not erode. You are not the strongest or the fastest, but you do not diminish." "That's probably the nicest thing anyone said to me since I got here," Maya replied with a tired smile. The turning point came on week 17. The exercise was advanced combat simulation. Candidates were placed in a virtual environment so realistic that the brain could not distinguish it from reality. Pain receptors were engaged. Death in the simulation resulted in physical unconsciousness in the real world as the brain experienced simulated death. It was the most controversial training method in the academy, but it was also the most effective. It taught candidates to fight with everything they had because the stakes felt absolutely real. The scenario was a hostage rescue. 6 candidates, including Maya, were inserted into a virtual space station held by enemy forces. Intelligence indicated 12 hostages held in a central chamber. Enemy forces numbered approximately 30 combatants. The objective was to extract the hostages with minimal casualties. Thane observed from the control room, watching multiple feeds simultaneously. This scenario had a 72% failure rate. Most teams either lost members trying to assault the position or retreated without completing the objective. The team moved through the station with reasonable coordination. They eliminated enemy patrols quietly, gathered intelligence, and developed an assault plan. Kron would lead the frontal assault. Salis would provide air support. Maya and 2 others would flank from the ventilation system. The plan fell apart within 30 seconds of execution. The enemy had reinforcements that intelligence had not identified. The frontal assault was pinned down by concentrated fire. Salis took a simulated kill shot and dropped from the exercise. The flanking team was discovered and forced to retreat. Kron was hit, his simulated wounds catastrophic. Click was unconscious. The remaining candidates were scattered and disorganized. The mission was failing. Maya found herself alone in a maintenance corridor, her simulated weapon nearly out of ammunition. She could hear hostages screaming in the distance. Enemy forces were converging on her team's position. The tactical display showed that extraction was no longer possible. Thane watched her heart rate, expecting her to call for simulation end, to admit defeat. Instead, Maya did something unexpected. She reversed course, moving toward the enemy instead of away. She used the station's environmental controls to create confusion, venting atmosphere in sealed sections, triggering fire suppression systems, and overriding lighting. She became a ghost, appearing just long enough to eliminate an enemy combatant before vanishing into the station's infrastructure. She was not fighting like a trained soldier. She was fighting like someone who had studied every survival manual ever written, who understood that conventional tactics only worked in conventional situations. This was not conventional. She reached the hostage chamber through a maintenance shaft. The enemy had left minimal guards, confident that the main assault team was neutralized. Maya eliminated the guards with clinical efficiency, not because she was skilled with weapons, but because she had learned to be patient, to wait for perfect opportunities, to never waste ammunition. She freed the hostages and led them through the maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main corridors where enemy forces were searching. She had memorized the station layout during the initial briefing, a detail most candidates had dismissed as unimportant. She extracted 11 of the 12 hostages. One had been killed before she arrived. She carried Kron's unconscious body over her shoulders, refusing to leave a teammate behind, even though it slowed her escape. She crossed the extraction threshold with seconds remaining on the mission timer. The simulation ended. Maya collapsed in the real world, her body finally acknowledging the exhaustion and pain it had been suppressing. Medical staff rushed to check her vitals. Thane dismissed them with a gesture. "What was your thought process?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Maya struggled to focus, her brain still adjusting to being back in reality. "Thought process, sir? You abandoned tactical doctrine, you operated alone, you improvised constantly. These are not behaviors we encourage. Yet you succeeded where others failed. Explain." "The situation changed, sir. The original plan was no longer viable. I adapted. You took unnecessary risks. You could have called for extraction. And left the hostages and my teammates, sir? That wasn't acceptable. Your individual survival should have been your priority." Maya looked at him with exhausted eyes. "Respectfully, sir, no. The mission was my priority. The hostages were my priority. My teammates were my priority. My survival was fourth on that list." Thane was silent for a long moment. "You are either the most tactically flexible candidate I have trained, or the most foolishly stubborn. I have not determined which." "Can I be both, sir?" That might have been a laugh. It was hard to tell with Draconites. The Academy administration reviewed the simulation footage. Some instructors argued that Maya's approach was reckless and should not be rewarded. Others pointed out that she had achieved the objective when more conventionally trained candidates had failed. Commandant Vex made the final decision. "The Vanguard Corps does not need soldiers who follow doctrine blindly. We need warriors who can achieve the impossible. Lieutenant Reeves demonstrated that capacity." She continues. Word spread through the candidate barracks. The human had soloed a scenario designed for team coordination. The human who was not the strongest or the fastest or the most skilled had somehow become the most successful. Resentment grew among some candidates who felt their own accomplishments were being overshadowed. A group of them, led by an arrogant reptilian named Scar, decided to make their feelings known. They cornered Maya in the training facility after hours, 5 against 1. Scar was twice her size, with natural armor plating and venomous claws. "You do not belong here, human," Scar hissed. "You are weak. The only reason you have not been expelled is because the instructors pity your primitive species." Maya assessed the situation quickly. She was unarmed. They were between her and the exit. Her chance of winning a physical confrontation was effectively zero. "I don't want trouble," she said, her voice calm. "Let me pass." "Or what? You will cry? You will run to the instructors? Typical human cowardice." Maya's expression did not change. "I'm going to walk past you. You can let me, or you can start something you'll regret. Your choice." Scar laughed and reached for her. His clawed hand was fast, but Maya was already moving. She did not try to fight him directly. Instead, she redirected his momentum, using his own strength and speed against him. It was a technique from Earth martial arts, one that relied on leverage and timing rather than raw power. Scar stumbled, off balance. Before he could recover, Maya had moved past him toward the exit. The other 4 moved to block her. Maya stopped, her posture shifting slightly into a stance they did not recognize. "Last chance," she said quietly. "Walk away." They rushed her together. What happened next was captured on security footage that would later become legendary at the Academy. Maya did not fight like a soldier trained in military combatives. She fought like someone who had learned 100 different fighting styles from a dozen different Earth cultures and synthesized them into something uniquely effective. She used joint locks from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, strikes from Muay Thai, redirects from Aikido, and footwork from boxing. She moved with economy of motion that made every movement purposeful. She did not try to hurt them seriously. She simply made it impossible for them to hurt her while systematically removing their ability to continue the confrontation. Joints were hyperextended. Balance was disrupted. Pressure points were struck with clinical precision. The fight lasted 43 seconds. All 5 candidates were on the ground, conscious but unable to continue. Maya stood over them, breathing hard but unmarked. You were right about one thing, she said to Scar. I don't belong here. None of us do. We earn the right to be here every single day through our actions. And if you can't understand that, then you're the one who should leave. She walked out without looking back. Security reported the incident to Master Instructor Thane. He reviewed the footage with an expression that might have been satisfaction. When asked what disciplinary action he recommended, he replied, none. She defended herself with appropriate force. The others initiated hostile contact. They will receive remedial training in understanding their limitations. From that point forward, no one questioned Maya's right to be at the academy. Even those who did not respect humans began to respect her. The final examination came on week 24, the culmination of 6 months of training. It was called the Ordeal, and it had broken stronger candidates than anyone in the current cohort. The format was simple. Candidates would face Master Instructor Thane in personal combat. The objective was not to defeat him, which was impossible. The objective was to survive for 10 minutes against a warrior who had spent his entire life perfecting the art of controlled violence. Candidates could use any equipment they wanted. They could employ any tactics they chose, but they could not quit. If they surrendered, they failed. If they were rendered unconscious, they failed. 10 minutes of survival was the only path to graduation. Kron went first. His Ursinid battle rage made him a formidable opponent. He lasted 7 minutes before Thane put him down with a strike that bypassed his natural armor. Kron was carried to the medical bay with 3 broken ribs and a concussion, but he had fought with honor. Salis lasted 4 minutes before her hollow bones became a liability. Jex, the crystalline lithomorph, lasted 9 minutes and 41 seconds, so close, yet still a failure. One by one, candidates entered the combat ring. Most lasted between 5 and 8 minutes, a few exceeded 9 minutes, none reached 10. Then it was Maya's turn. She entered the ring wearing her standard human military gear, no special armor, no exotic weapons. She carried a training baton and wore a ballistic vest. Compared to Thane's armored scales and natural weapons, she looked like a child playing dress-up. The observation gallery was packed. Every instructor, every candidate, everyone who could get clearance had come to watch. The humans' ordeal had become the most anticipated event of the examination cycle. Thane stood in the center of the ring, his 4-meter frame radiating controlled menace. 10 minutes, Lieutenant Reeves. Survive and you graduate. Fail and you return to your logistics duties on Earth. Are you ready? Yes, sir. You may begin when... Maya moved before he finished speaking. It was not an attack, just a repositioning that put more distance between them. A subtle message. She would not wait for permission or courtesy. This was survival. Thane smiled, showing all of his teeth. Good. He came at her like an avalanche, fast, powerful, inexorable. His first strike would have killed her if it had connected. It did not connect. Maya was already moving, slipping to the side with minimal wasted motion. He struck again and again. Each blow was calculated to test her reactions, to probe her defenses. Maya did not try to block directly. She redirected, evaded, moved away from his power. You cannot run for 10 minutes, Thane observed, his strikes continuing without pause. Not planning to run, sir. Planning to not be where you're hitting. The first minute passed. Maya had not attempted a single counterattack. She was focused entirely on defense, on survival. This was not cowardice. This was strategy. Thane increased the pressure. His strikes came faster, chains of attacks that flowed into each other. Maya's defense became more desperate. She started taking glancing blows, impacts that would bruise but not incapacitate. 2 minutes. Thane changed tactics. Instead of overwhelming force, he used feints and misdirection. A high strike that was actually a setup for a low sweep. A left-hand attack that masked a right-hand grab. He was fighting with the full depth of his 12,000-year-old military tradition. Maya adapted. She stopped trying to predict his attacks and simply reacted to what was actually happening. It was a subtle shift, one that most observers missed, but Thane noticed. She had stopped thinking and started responding on instinct. 3 minutes. You're doing well, Thane said, his voice showing no strain despite the constant movement. Better than expected. But you're slowing. Your endurance is reaching its limit. Maybe, Maya gasped, sweat pouring down her face, or maybe I'm pacing myself. 4 minutes. Thane decided to test her claim. He launched a sustained assault, 20 consecutive strikes with no pause. Force, speed, and technique combined into a display that would have incapacitated most candidates in seconds. Maya went into pure survival mode: block, evade, redirect, retreat. She gave ground willingly, making space to dissipate his momentum. She took hits on her arms and shoulders, protecting her core and head. Her ballistic vest absorbed impacts that would have broken ribs. 5 minutes, halfway point. The observation gallery was silent. No one had expected the human to last this long. Kron, watching from the medical bay via live feed, found himself leaning forward, unconsciously willing Maya to survive. Thane paused, assessing. Maya was visibly exhausted. Her defense was degrading, but she was still standing, still moving, still conscious. Her eyes showed pain, but also something else, determination that bordered on obsession. "Why?" Thane asked, not attacking for a moment. "Why do you persist? You are outmatched. You have nothing to prove." "Because quitting isn't in my DNA, sir," Maya replied between gasping breaths. "Humans don't stop just because something is hard. Your species' stubbornness borders on irrationality." "Yeah, we get that a lot." 6 minutes. Thane came at her again, but this time he was not testing. He was trying to end the fight. His strikes carried full power, each one capable of breaking bones, rupturing organs, causing trauma that would take weeks to heal. Maya could not fully evade anymore. She was too tired, too slow. She started taking solid hits. Her left arm went numb from a strike to her shoulder. Her right leg nearly buckled from a low kick. She tasted blood from a blow that caught her mouth. But she did not fall. She did not surrender. She adjusted her stance to compensate for her injuries and continued defending. 7 minutes. "You are breaking," Thane observed. "Your body is failing." "My body's been through worse," Maya said, spitting blood. "I once ran a marathon with a stress fracture. I completed selection training with pneumonia. My body doesn't get to make decisions. My mind does." 8 minutes. Thane switched tactics again. Instead of strikes, he went for grapples, using his superior size and strength to control her. If he could immobilize her, she could not survive the remaining time. But Maya had trained with Kron during their months together. She had learned how to fight opponents larger than herself. She used leverage, used joint manipulation, used techniques that turned size into a disadvantage. She could not throw Thane. She could not submit him. But she could make it difficult for him to hold her. Every time he secured a grip, she made it uncomfortable, found pressure points, created situations where maintaining the hold cost him more than it cost her. 9 minutes. The gallery was on their feet. Even the instructors who had dismissed humans as inferior were watching in disbelief. The small human was actually going to make it. Thane knew it too. He had 1 minute to finish this, to prove that his assessment of limits was correct. He gathered himself for a final assault, one that would end the fight definitively. He came at Maya with everything he had, speed and power and technique refined over centuries of warfare. It was a demonstration of why Draconites were feared across the galaxy, why they had dominated their region of space for millennia. Maya met his assault with the last reserves of her strength. She was not thinking anymore. She was operating on pure survival instinct, on muscle memory, on the accumulated experience of 6 months of brutal training and a lifetime of refusing to quit. She took hits that should have ended the fight, a strike to her chest that cracked her sternum, a kick to her leg that would leave her limping for weeks, a glancing blow to her head that made her vision blur. But she stayed standing. She kept moving. She survived. The timer reached 10 minutes. The alarm sounded. The ERNB fight was over. Maya collapsed immediately, her body finally acknowledging that it was out of resources. Medical staff rushed into the ring, scanners active, assessment protocols initiating. Thane stood over her, breathing heavily for the first time in the entire examination. He looked down at the broken human who had just accomplished something he had not believed possible. "Why did you not fall?" he asked, his voice carrying genuine curiosity. Maya, barely conscious, managed a smile. "Because you told me 10 minutes, anything less, would be quitting." Thane laughed. It was a sound that echoed through the gallery, a genuine expression of respect and admiration from a warrior who rarely showed either. "You are not human," he said. "You are something else entirely." "Nah," Maya whispered as consciousness faded. "Just human. That's enough." The medical assessment showed extensive injuries: cracked sternum, bruised ribs, torn ligaments in both shoulders, a grade 2 concussion, and miscellaneous contusions across her entire body. Recovery would take months, but she had survived 10 minutes. She had graduated. The ceremony was held 3 days later. Maya attended in a wheelchair, her body still too damaged to stand for extended periods. Of the 47 candidates who had started, 21 graduated. Maya was the only human. Commandant Vex called her name. "Lieutenant Maya Reeves, United Earth Defense Force. You have completed the requirements for entry into the Vanguard Corps. You have demonstrated courage, tactical flexibility, and an unwillingness to accept defeat that exemplifies our highest ideals. You are hereby granted the rank of Vanguard Operative with all accompanying rights and responsibilities." The gallery applauded. Even those who had doubted her, who had mocked her species, acknowledged her achievement. Thane approached and presented her with the Vanguard insignia, a small crystal that would be embedded in her uniform. As he pinned it to her collar, he spoke quietly so only she could hear. "I was wrong about humans. I assessed your species based on averages and data. I did not account for the variable that matters most." "What variable, sir?" "The refusal to recognize limitations as final. Every species has physical limits. Humans are unique in that you see limits as suggestions rather than absolutes." He stepped back and saluted, a gesture of respect from a superior officer to an equal. "You have taught me something valuable, Lieutenant Reeves. I am in your debt." "No debt, sir. Just doing what humans do." Later, after the ceremony, after the celebrations, Maya found herself alone in the observation gallery, looking out at the stars. Her body ached. Her injuries would take months to heal. But she had done it. She had proven that humans belonged in the Vanguard Corps. Kron found her there. The massive Ursinid settled carefully onto the bench beside her wheelchair. "You are famous now," he rumbled. "The human who survived Thane. They will tell stories about you." "I'd rather they tell stories about what we accomplish as Vanguard operatives," Maya replied. "Individual glory is less important than team success. This is why you will be a good operative. You understand what matters." Kron was quiet for a moment. "When we first trained together, I thought you were weak. I was wrong. You are not strong in the way my people are strong, but you are strong in ways I did not know existed." "Different doesn't mean inferior," Maya said. "Just different." "Yes, I have learned this. The galaxy is learning this." He stood, preparing to leave. "When you are recovered, I hope we will serve together. I would trust no one else to watch my back." "I'd be honored, Kron." Word of Maya's achievement spread through the coalition. The initial dismissal of humanity as a support species began to crack. If humans could graduate from Crimson Gate Academy, what else were they capable of? Earth's military received new recruitment inquiries. Other branches of coalition forces wanted to understand human training methods, human tactics, human psychology. The species that had been ignored 14 months ago was suddenly being studied intensely. And at Crimson Gate Academy, in the Hall of Graduates, a new plaque was installed. It showed Maya's name, her graduation date, and a simple quote that she had said during her entrance interview. "Because someone has to be first, and I volunteer." Beneath it, Master Instructor Thane had added a personal note in Draconite script. Translated, it read, "She did not possess the greatest strength or the fastest speed or the sharpest mind, but she possessed something more valuable, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. This is the true measure of a warrior." 6 months later, Maya returned to active duty with the Vanguard Corps. Her first mission was a hostage rescue on a contested moon. She led a team that included Kron, Salis, and 3 other graduates from her cohort. The mission was supposed to be routine. It went wrong immediately. Enemy forces outnumbered them 3-1. Intelligence had been faulty. Extraction was compromised. Every conventional tactical option led to failure. Maya assessed the situation and made a decision. We adapt, we improvise, we complete the mission anyway. That's what Vanguard does. They succeeded. All hostages extracted, zero friendly casualties, enemy forces neutralized. The after-action report credited unconventional tactics employed by human operative as the key factor in success. It was the first of many such reports. Over the following years, humans became increasingly prominent in Vanguard operations. They brought perspectives and capabilities that other species had not considered. They excelled in situations that required adaptability, that rewarded creative thinking, that demanded absolute refusal to quit. And every human who joined the Vanguard Corps heard the story of Maya Reeves, the logistics officer who became the first of her species to graduate from Crimson Gate Academy, who survived 10 minutes against Master Instructor Thane, who proved that humanity belonged among the galaxy's elite warriors. The galaxy had welcomed a species of clerks and administrators, suitable for support roles, but nothing more. What they got was a species that redefined possible, not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through the simple, stubborn, terrifying refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Thane, watching new cohorts of candidates that now included multiple humans, often reflected on that day. The day a human who should have broken after 5 minutes lasted the full 10. The day his assumptions about limitations shattered like glass. He had trained warriors from 100 species across 3 centuries. But Maya Reeves had taught him something none of them had, that the greatest weapon was not strength or speed or even skill. It was the mindset that said 10 minutes and refused to consider anything less. That was the human advantage. Not that they were stronger, not that they were better, but that they simply would not stop. And in a galaxy that measured capability by peaks of performance, humans were proving that consistency and endurance could be just as valuable. The story spread. In military academies across coalition space, instructors told new recruits about the human who survived the unsurvivable. In bars and mess halls, soldiers debated whether any species could match human stubbornness. In strategic planning rooms, commanders began considering how to incorporate human perspectives into operations. Humanity had arrived in galactic society quietly, almost apologetically, unsure of their place. They were leaving a mark that would echo for generations, not because they conquered, not because they dominated, but because they showed that the refusal to quit was its own form of power. And somewhere on Earth, in military training facilities from pole to pole, new recruits underwent trials that their ancestors had developed over thousands of years of warfare. Trials designed not to make people stronger or faster, but to teach them that the body's limits were suggestions, that the mind's determination was the true measure of capability. They called it spirit, or grit, or heart, depending on the culture. The galaxy was learning it had another name, humanity. And that name meant something now. It meant that when the situation seemed impossible, when conventional tactics had failed, when others would have surrendered, you called in the humans. Because they would look at the impossible and say, "How long do I have?" And then they would persist until the job was done or they physically could not continue. Master Instructor Thane updated his training protocols. He incorporated human training philosophies into the curriculum. He began teaching candidates that survival was as much about mental resilience as physical capability. And every time a new cohort started at Crimson Gate Academy, he would tell them about Maya Reeves, about the human who lasted 10 minutes, about the graduate who taught a Draconite warrior that he still had things to learn. She was not exceptional by the standards we typically measure, he would say. She was exceptional because she redefined what standards matter. Remember that as you train. The most dangerous opponent is not the one who is strongest or fastest. It is the one who simply will not stop. The candidates would nod, believing they understood, but understanding only came through experience, through the moment when their bodies screamed to quit and their minds had to decide whether to listen, through the ordeal that separated those who could from those who would, and the ones who succeeded, who graduated, who joined the Vanguard Corps. They all carried a piece of Maya's lesson with them. The lesson that 10 minutes was 10 minutes, that survival was a choice as much as a capability, that humanity's greatest weapon was the refusal to recognize defeat. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, one impossible achievement at a time. Humans were not just support staff. They were not just average. They were warriors in the truest sense, fighting not just enemies, but limitations themselves. And that made all the difference.